activities related to getting your product to its customers. So that starts inside product definition, goes everything from positioning, messaging, language that's being used, looks at the vehicles for getting the communication out there, such as a company website, a company blog, Twitter, Facebook, etc., and then all the way into things like PR and actually even into the sales channel. A letter sent to all of your customers, even if it comes from the customer support team, is a marketing effort. So that's how we'll broadly define the scope of marketing for a company. That doesn't mean, by the way, that all marketing activities have to be advertising or getting on somewhere with a bullhorn and shouting loudly about how great you are. That is not necessarily the marketing that you need. So we believe fundamentally that marketing is all about your product. Great products market themselves. Now, that's clearly not enough, otherwise I'd end my slideshow here. But it is a core element to what you're doing. Time and time again, we run into startups, people with utter brilliance who have built amazing technology, but haven't packaged it right. Or companies that have built something really, really cool, but haven't really thought about who's going to use it, or even how to reach those people who are going to use it. Or others who have watched the success of companies like Twitter or YouTube and seen the graphs of the slow traffic all of a sudden into these crazy hockey sticks and assume that these things just kind of happen as long as you just stay out there. And our position is that that's not necessarily the case. And the alcohol tester MP3 product would be that in that genre of who really wants this thing? What's this for? If this is being marketed to, I don't know, police officers, could be a great win there. If that's being marketed against an iPod, probably not so much. So we think there's a lot of importance to thinking about the quality of your product. Just a week ago, I was introduced to a new company who's built this really cool real-time, or better phrased, they're good at looking at Twitter's API, good at searching stuff. They're very, very good at it. But the very first out-of-box experience, in other words, sign up, register, start using the product, I had no idea what I was supposed to do. It had actually been recommended to me by a friend of mine. There was a welcome to our service, startup screen. And then I clicked OK and looked at this UI for about a minute and then said, well, I'm giving up, I'm moving on. And you should think about that in context of the products that you're building. If a new person gets in front of your product and spends a full minute sitting there, that's about as much time as you're ever going to get. And a minute, by the way, I was being generous because this came from a friend of mine. Typical 20, 30, 40 seconds. Right? You do not have much time. That first impression, that first product experience could be everything. So some things you can do are employ some tools. So we'll talk about some specific tools as I go on. But before you launch, you should really know the quality of the product you're shipping. And there are times when it's okay to be out there before you're really ready. But at the end of the day, the products that are going to have the big upswing, the big success, are those who have learned what that out-of-the-box experience needs to be, and learned how to gauge what users want out of your product. So some of the sites I recommend checking out, usertesting.com, really good way to have people check out your website that you don't know. I want to give one really solid recommendation on early stage product testing. Don't count on your best friends. Your best friends are there to pat you on the back and tell you you're awesome. That's what best friends do. And you want them to do that. Even the ones who are really critical and give you feedback, odds are they're probably a little busier than you need. But when you go to a site like User Testing or Get Satisfaction, when you consider your masses of audience out there, you'll get people who, for some reason, want to dive into your product. They'll find more bugs for you than anybody on your own team will ever find, because for whatever reason, you'll invoke some passion within them. So, fundamental thing for me, beta testers and your friends are not the same. You want your friends to try out your new thing because you want your friends to try it out? Cool, go for it. But they're not the ones that will give you that core critical feedback you need. In fact, when I start consulting with any company, one of the first things I say is, I'm not your best friend. We might go out for a beer one night, but I'm not here to tell you how great a job you're doing. That's what other people are for. I'm here to help you find how to do things better, right? So look for those people in your world. Look for, to a degree of separation of friends, because they'll be a lot more honest with you. And by the way, it's not because your friends don't want to be honest. It just doesn't quite work out the way you think it would. Next thing, know your market. and time again, I run into companies with cool technology, and they think that the people who want to use it are, highly mobile, affluent males, 28 to 34, etc. But haven't really thought about those people and how they spend their time and what technologies they use. I've met companies who think they can supplant mobile messaging services because not everybody's on the iPhone. I don't really know if that makes a lot of sense. Now, if you want to get really narrow, right, that's when you get good. When you can say, we are going to target people who need real-time search capability of Twitter combined with real-time blog scanning capability because they need to show these reports to their boss who happens to be the VP of marketing or CTO or whatever. Well, that's narrowly defined. If you're building a technology tool set for programmers, know your programmers well, right? There's not one size fits all. Right? One programmer who's dealing with front-end HTML, CSS development is radically different from some guy who codes PHP for a living, right? Figure out the needs of your target market. The more narrowly you define your market, the better you'll be able to suit your product to that market, and the better you'll be able to message your product. I've seen companies that entire slogans are, we'll save you time. Okay, that's great. So will a faster car, right? Think about, when will you save me time? We'll save you time when you're trying to do research. We'll save you time when you're trying to program. We'll save you time when you're X, Y, Z. Whatever that is, think about your benefits as they specifically apply to the target market you're selling to. I think you can sell this guy Laker paraphernalia. So if that's what any of your businesses are, find this guy. So next up, launching your company, launching your service, launching your product. You really don't want to do things wrong. I've seen too many companies apply external pressures to their launch strategy that ultimately drives them into failure. If there's a given industry conference on a given date, and that date is 6 weeks before your ready date, you can't do it. Sorry, don't care who's going to be there. You're not ready. Now maybe you can announce the company a few weeks early. Maybe you can say what field you'll be in or do something like that. But don't bring your product out until it's ready to be out. If your investors are telling you you got to launch on this date, well, there's times when you need to push back. Granted, if you're not going to be able to pay the rent anymore, you might have to make some sacrifices. But fundamentally, when you get off track from the launch, it's very, very hard to recover. How many of people here saw a company called Cool launch last summer? Only about a third. Okay, now everybody stop BlackBerry for a second. The question was, how many of you heard a company called Cool launch last summer? Just stretch, it's okay. About half. All right, so this company launched last summer. They announced themselves to be bigger than Google and great search and all these other cool things. And they had done this huge media tour, and everybody knew about them. And the day they launched, all the articles came out, these guys are going to go kill Google. And there's, whether that would happen or not is to be determined. The very next day, due to some actual accidents in the technology, the product wasn't working right. So the day when literally millions of people got exposed to this company, you could search for things and not get the right results. For example, if you're running a search company, one of the things you probably want to make sure you've done really, really well is ego search. Because I don't know about you, but my guess is a lot of people, first time they try a new search engine, put in their own names and see what happens. Right? We all like ourselves a little bit. So if you haven't done the ego search right, probably aren't ready to go out there. And I personally, that was my first test. I looked for my name, I looked for my company, I then looked for previous companies I'd worked with, and I went back to Google, and that was that. Right? So that company never got me back as a potential customer. The uphill battle from a failed launch is so much harder than it's harder to come from negative than from zero. Anyone who bought a house about 18 months ago knows what I'm talking about. Timing.